Hi, this is Brad Constantine, and you've reached the Book of Mormon lecture series. I've been teaching seminary and institute for the last 11 years, and this is an attempt to do a deep dive into the Book of Mormon itself. I'm hoping that you'll find this uplifting and edifying. This is not an official recording of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but every attempt has been made to be as doctrinally accurate as possible. So if you're ready for a deep dive into the Book of Mormon, here we go. Hi, welcome back to the Book of Mormon podcast. This discussion is going to be on Alma chapter 47. Now remember in the last chapter that Amalickiah, who was sought after by Moroni, ran away, and he has gone among the Lamanites, but he now shows up in chapter 47 as we talk about what he's going to try to do here among the Lamanites. And again, like I mentioned in the last chapter, we need to consider the symbolism here that Amalickiah is Lucifer, but that King Lehanti that we're going to meet here in this chapter is us. So think about Lehanti as being us, and that Amalickiah is Lucifer. Verse 1, Now we will return in our record to Amalickiah and those who had fled with him into the wilderness. For behold, he had taken those who went with him, and went up in the land of Nephi among the Lamanites, and to stir up the Lamanites to anger against the people of Nephi, insomuch that the king of the Lamanites sent a proclamation throughout all his land, among all his people, that they should gather themselves together again to go to battle against the Nephites. And it came to pass that when the proclamation had gone forth among them, they were exceedingly afraid. Yea, they feared to displease the king, and they also feared to go to battle against the Nephites, lest they should lose their lives. And it came to pass that they would not, or the more part of them would not, obey the commandments of the king. And now it came to pass that the king was wroth because of their disobedience. Therefore he gave Amalickiah the command of that part of his army which was obedient unto his commands, and commanded him that he should go forth and compel them to arms. Notice that he's compelling them here. Now behold, this was the desire of Amalickiah, for he being a very subtle man to do evil. Notice how Satan is also very subtle. Therefore he laid the plan in his heart to dethrone the king of the Lamanites, again trying to overthrow the king. And now he had got the command of those parts of the Lamanites who were in favor of the king, and he sought to gain favor over those who were not obedient. Therefore he went forward to the place which was called Onidah, for thither had all the Lamanites fled, for they discovered the army coming, and supposing that they were coming to destroy them, therefore they fled to Onidah, to the place of arms. And they had appointed a man to be king and a leader over them, being fixed in their minds with a determination, or a determined resolution, that they would not be subjected to go against the Nephites. And it came to pass that they had gathered themselves together upon the top of the mount, which was called Antipas, in preparation to battle. Now it was not Amalickiah's intention to give them battle according to the commandments of the king, but behold, it was his intention to gain favor with the armies of the Lamanites, that he might place himself at their head, and dethrone the king and take possession of the kingdom. And behold, it came to pass that he caused his army to pitch their tents in the valley which was near the Mount Antipas. And it came to pass that when it was night, he sent a secret embassy into the Mount Antipas. Notice how Lucifer works in the dark, desiring that the leader of those who were upon the mount, whose name was Lehanti. Now, I want you to think of yourself here as Lehanti, and what would you do in this circumstance, or what should you do? That he should come down to the foot of the mount, for he desired to speak with him. And it came to pass that when Lehanti received the message, he durst not go down to the foot of the mount. And it came to pass that Amalickiah sent again the second time, desiring him to come down. See how persistent he can be. And it came to pass that Lehanti would not, and he sent again the third time. Lehanti is being very wise in staying up on the top. He's maintaining his standards. He's staying at the top of the mountain. And it came to pass that when Amalickiah found that he could not get Lehanti to come down off the mount, Lehanti was not willing to give up his standards. He went up into the mount, nearly to Lehanti's camp, and he sent again the fourth time his message unto Lehanti, desiring that he would come down, and that he would bring his guards with him. And it came to pass that when Lehanti had come down, so now Lehanti is being convinced to lower his standards, even though he seems to be protected by his guards. He's still lowering his standards and coming down with his guards to Amalickiah, that Amalickiah desired him to come down with his army in the nighttime and surround those men in their camps, over whom the king had given him command, and that he would deliver them up into Lehanti's hands, if he would make him, Amalickiah, a second leader over the whole army. So now Lehanti is being flattered here to be the leader of the army, to take over the army, so long as Amalickiah, or Satan, can be the second person in charge. And it came to pass that Lehanti came down with his men, so now he's lowering his standard, and surrounded the men of Amalickiah, so that before they awoke at the dawn of day, they were surrounded by the armies of Lehanti. And it came to pass that when they saw that they were surrounded, they pled with Amalickiah that he would suffer them to fall in with their brethren, that they might not be destroyed. Now this was the very thing which Amalickiah had desired. Notice the trickery that Amalickiah is doing here. Just like Satan can carefully lead us down to hell. And it came to pass that he delivered his men contrary to the commands of the king. Now this was the thing that Amalickiah desired, that he might accomplish his designs in dethroning the king. Now it was the custom among the Lamanites, if their chief leader was killed, to appoint the second leader to be their chief leader. And it came to pass, notice what happens here now to Lehanti. Remember, he's come down from the mount, he's lowered his standards, and now he still has maintained Amalickiah to be with him. It came to pass that Amalickiah caused that one of his servants should administer poison by degrees to Lehanti, that he died. Satan leads us astray in small amounts, in small degrees, until we are dead spiritually. A person who is active in the church can be led astray in small degrees until he is inactive and indifferent to the church. I like this analogy, or this summary by John By the Way. The scriptures contain many types and shadows of Christ and many conviction. And my conviction is that the story of Amalickiah provides us with the opposite, a type and shadow of Satan. Think of the parallels. Amalickiah wanted to be king. He was cast out. He took his followers with him. Similarly, Satan wanted to exalt his throne above the stars of God, was cast out, took his followers with him. Amalickiah is described as cunning, flattering, and a murderer. Satan is also described as cunning, flattering, and a murderer. Amalickiah poisoned Lehanti by degrees. Satan leads us carefully or by degrees down to hell. Amalickiah did not care for the blood of his people. Satan will not support his children at the last day. Amalickiah succeeded in persuading the king of the Lamanites to attack the Nephites, but a large part of the Lamanite army refused to fight the Nephites. They found refuge on top of the Mount Antipas and appointed Lehanti to be their leader. 3 different times Amalickiah invited Lehanti to come down from the mountain. Lehanti refused each time. Eventually Amalickiah went up nearly to the camp of Lehanti and persuaded Lehanti to come down just a little. Amalickiah convinced Lehanti that he was not really an enemy but a friend who only wanted to be second in command. Eventually Lehanti agreed to Amalickiah's scheme and was unknowingly poisoned by degrees until he died. As Latter-day Saints, we have gone up to the mountain of the Lord and made covenants. Satan continually invites us to come down. We refuse, so he invites us to come down just a little. If we do, we subject ourselves to his power, where we will eventually be poisoned by degrees. If we are wounded by a gunshot or a sword, we know about it. But if we are slowly poisoned, we might not realize it's happening. Poison is a perfect metaphor for Satan's tactics, because a victim of poison may not even realize what's happening and may still believe he's in control up until the moment he dies. The spiritual message is powerful and chilling. Don't come down from your mountain. Keep your covenants. Satan wants us to come down so he can poison us by degrees. It's interesting to note that Jesus was invited to come down 3 times from the pinnacle of the temple, but he never did. Elder James E. Faust said, we all have an inner braking system that will stop us before we follow Satan too far down the wrong road. It is the still small voice which is within us. But once we have succumbed, the braking system begins to leak brake fluid, and our stopping mechanism becomes weak and ineffective. We need not become paralyzed with fear of Satan's power. He can have no power over us unless we permit it. He is really a coward, and if we stand firm, he will retreat. One of Satan's approaches is to persuade a person who has transgressed that there is no hope of forgiveness. But there is always hope. Most sins, no matter how grievous, may be repented of if the desire is sincere enough. Satan's efforts can be thwarted by all who come unto Christ by obedience to the covenants and ordinances of the gospel. The humble followers of the divine master need not be deceived by the devil if they will be honest and true to their fellow men and women. Go to the house of the Lord, receive the sacrament worthily, observe the Sabbath day, pay their tithes and offerings, offer contrite prayers, engage in the Lord's work, and follow those who preside over them. Now when Lehanti was dead, the Lamanites appointed Amalickiah to be their leader and their chief commander. And it came to pass that Amalickiah marched with his armies, for he had gained his desires. to the land of Nephi, to the city of Nephi, which was the chief city. And the king came out to meet him with his guards, for he supposed that Amalickiah had fulfilled his commands, and that Amalickiah had gathered together so great an army to go against the Nephites to battle. But behold, as the king came out to meet Amalickiah, and caused that his servants should go forth to meet the king, and they went and bowed themselves before the king, as if to reverence him because of his greatness. And it came to pass that the king put forth his hand to raise them, and as was the custom with the Lamanites, as a token of peace, which custom they had taken from the Nephites. And it came to pass that when they had raised the first from the ground, when he had raised the first from the ground, behold, he stabbed the king to the heart, and he fell to the earth. Now the servants of the king fled, and the servants of Amalickiah raised a cry, saying, Behold, the servants of the king have stabbed him to the heart, and he has fallen, and they have fled. Behold, come and see. And it came to pass that Amalickiah commanded that his armies should march forth and see what had happened to the king. And when they had come to the spot and found the king lying in his gore, Amalickiah pretended to be wroth, and said, Whosoever loved the king, let him go forth and pursue his servants, that they may be slain. And it came to pass that all they who loved the king, when they had heard these words, came forth and pursued after the servants of the king. Now when the servants of the king saw an army pursuing after them, they were frightened again, and fled into the wilderness, and came over into the land of Zarahemla, and joined the people of Ammon. And the army which pursued after them returned, having pursued them in vain, and thus Amalickiah by his fraud gained the hearts of the people. And it came to pass on the morrow, he entered the city of Nephi with his armies, and took possession of the city. And now it came to pass that the queen, when she had heard that the king was slain, for Amalickiah had sent an embassy to the queen, informing her that the king had been slain by his servants, that he had pursued them with his army, but it was in vain, and that they had made their escape. Therefore, when the queen had received this message, she sent unto Amalickiah, desiring him that he would spare the people of the city. And she also desired him that he should come in unto her, and she also desired that he should bring witnesses with him to testify concerning the death of the king. And it came to pass that Amalickiah took the same servant that slew the king, and all them who were with him, and went in unto the queen, unto the place where she sat, and they all testified unto her that the king was slain by his own servants. And they said also, They have fled, does not this testify against them? And thus they satisfied the queen concerning the death of the king. And it came to pass that Amalickiah sought the favor of the queen, and took her unto him to wife. And thus by his fraud, and by the assistance of his cunning servants, he obtained the kingdom. Yea, he was acknowledged king throughout all the land, among all the people of the Lamanites, who were composed of the Lamanites, and the Lemuelites, and the Ishmaelites, and all the dissenters of the Nephites, from the reign of Nephi down to the present time. Now these dissenters, having the same instruction and the same information of the Nephites, yea, having been instructed in the same knowledge of the Lord, nevertheless it is strange to relate how not long after their dissension they became more hardened and impenitent, and more wild, wicked, and ferocious than the Lamanites, drinking in with the traditions of the Lamanites, giving way to indolence and all manner of lasciviousness, yea, entirely forgetting the Lord their God. Joseph Smith said, Strange as it may appear at first thought, yet it is no less strange than true that apostates, after turning from the faith of Christ, unless they have speedily repented, have sooner or later fallen in to the snares of the wicked one, and have been left destitute of the Spirit of God, to manifest their wickedness in the eyes of multitudes. When once that light which was in them is taken from them, they become as much darkened as they were previously enlightened. And then, no marvel, if all their power should be enlisted against the truth, and they, Judas-like, seek the destruction of those who were their greatest benefactors. Elder Maxwell said, Willful dissent ages ago among the Nephites produced yet other symptoms that are worthy of our pondering today, as life confronts us with determined dissenters who leave the church but who cannot leave the church alone. Then there are those dissenters who leave the church either formally or informally, but who cannot leave it alone. Usually anxious to please worldly galleries, they are critical or at least condescending towards the brethren. They not only seek to steady the ark, but also on occasion give it a hard shove. Often, having been taught the same true doctrines as the faithful, they have nevertheless moved in the direction of dissent. They have minds hardened by pride. Again, that was still Elder Maxwell. I bear testimony to these things, that as we look at the example here of Amalickiah, and how similar he is to Satan. And I hope that we can remember the lesson of Lehantai, and that is to not come down from the mountain, not come down from the temple covenants that we've made, not come down from our standards. I bear testimony that these things are true in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. See you next time.